because he's under Yid with Lid. There he is. Yid with Lid.
I know you.
I know you.
Hey, listen, before we start, I just want to say one thing.
You only want to say one thing?
Well, before we start, I didn't know anything about Harvey Weinstein before I read it in the paper.
So
okay?
you say.
I didn't know what he was. Really?
So you say.
I think we have a friend that we should ask.
Which friend should we ask here?
Well, I only know one person who's a professional actor.
Yeah, let's not even loop him into this discussion.
We're not even mention his name, but you know who I'm talking about, and I'm going to text him later.
Yeah, no, I am not gonna. I'm not even gonna touch that one. So.
Yeah, well, that was Harvey Weinstein's problem.
See, and if he had followed that policy,
he said the same thing. I'm not going to touch that one.
Then he wouldn't be in the trouble he's in right now. I mean, that's an amazing story. I just love the idea, though, that Lorne Michaels from Saturday Night Live decided that it was just a New York story and it wasn't something to make fun of.
Well, if it was just a New York, well, the president is from New York and they make fun of him all the time.
Right. So, well, all right. So there's a lot. Let's put aside the Harvey Weinstein thing because we ate up most of the show already on this. Let's go to two stories, I think, coming out today that involve Israel. I know we wanted to talk about the Iran deal, but there's two other stories that have kind of broken here. One is that the UN has decided to pull out of UNESCO, and then Israel followed suit. I'm sorry, the U.S. I said that earlier too. The U.S. has pulled out of UNESCO. That's the cultural program at the United Nations, the one that manages World Heritage Sites. In fact, there's 7 or 8 of them in Israel and another 3 in the West Bank that they manage, or at least that they participate in. And then Israel decided to follow suit just a couple hours later. They announced that they would also revert to just an observer status rather than being a member. This is not new. This started in 2011, right?
Well, it started, right. But the problem really is, and I think that the State Department positioned it wrong, because it's not necessarily that the UNESCO is anti-Israel. Okay, but UNESCO denies any Jewish connection to heritage sites, and it denies any Christian connection to heritage sites. Okay, so for example, they say that the only religion tied to the Temple Mount is Islam.
Right.
Well,
which is not true.
Right. Well, everyone knows about the Jewish connection, and certainly in the book of Luke, I'm talking about the gospel writer, not the one from Star Wars. Okay, in the book of Luke, it says that Jesus was at the Temple Mount. He was overturning the money changer tables. Correct?
Right, yes.
So,
very famous event.
Right? So the bottom line is that UNESCO is denying Jewish culture and Christian culture. And why, in my mind, it's important to say that is that because it's not just the U.S. protecting the Jews. It's also protecting the Christians. And the same thing with Hebron and, the Cave of the Patriarchs. I mean, if Christians believe in the Old Testament, what they call the Old Testament, then, Abraham, Isaac, and all those folks are buried in that place.
That's right. And by the way, that's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
And Hebron it's another World Heritage Site that they said that, only the Muslims have connection to.
Right.
And I'm not denying that they have a connection to. I'm just denying that no one else does.
Right. So just to walk everybody back on this thing here, in 2011, UNESCO decided to vote on whether or not to admit the Palestinian Authority as a member state. And the U.S. expected France to vote against this thing. France ended up voting for it and basically stabbing the U.S. and Israel in the back. And
which they've done often.
Which they have done often. And so it provided the very first sort of de facto recognition of the Palestinian Authority as a sovereign state, because only sovereign states can be full voting members on these things. There are some committees that have observer status at the UN. The Palestinian Authority is one of them. But this was sort of a de facto recognition of statehood, and the U.S. was pissed about it. And Obama was pissed about it and cut off funding to UNESCO.
I think that Obama was just pissed about it because they got to it before he did.
Well, in any event, Obama never did get to it, right? And in a very famous conversation for a different reason, he expressed his displeasure with Nicolas Sarkozy over that vote. That was reported at the time, but the big story on that was the conversation that was on the open mic where he and Sarkozy were talking about how much they disliked Benjamin Netanyahu,
right.
and it kind of exploded into the thing. But that was the same conversation they were having, was that Obama was ticked that Sarkozy had done this. So this is a move that had been underway, I think, probably since Trump got in office, since Nikki Haley took over as UN ambassador. I think the State Department's been working on this for some time. It wasn't a surprise. What does it mean?
The interesting thing that I found is because Tillerson is not as pro-Israel as Trump or Nikki Haley, and I was surprised that they did it, to be honest.
I think Tillerson's just more pro-pragmatic is what the issue is. He's sort of like James Baker. It's kind of like James Baker.
No, James Baker was different. I mean, James Baker is the man who said, F the Jews, they're not going to vote for us anyway.
Right.
And he didn't say F. I think that what it really, in the long run, I think it's a warning, a shot across the bow to the UN, because with that, the United States doesn't have to give money to UNESCO. And it's pulling back some of its funding. So I think in the end, I mean, something that Nikki Haley's been trying to do ever since she took over was to warn the United Nations they have to be fairer.
Right.
They don't have to be pro-Israel. They just have to be fairer.
Right. And I think that UNESCO is actually not the biggest problem in this case either. I think the Human Rights Commission is the biggest problem, right? But so what does it mean to be for this to have happened? What does that do to UNESCO? What does that do to its standing? In your opinion, what's the impact?
Nothing.
Yeah, it's symbolic at best, right?
It's symbolic, and like I said, I think that we positioned it wrong. I think we positioned a lot of it wrong, but because we said it was an Israel thing, it's not an Israel thing.
Yep.
It's bigger than that.
It is, and so that was the one story. But the bigger story, I think, and one that it's been covered. So I mean, I'm not going to say it's not been covered, but kind of gotten lost in all the Weinstein stuff, is the fact that apparently Hamas and Fatah have reached an agreement whereby Hamas is going to give up control of Gaza and reintegrate into the Palestinian Authority. And the reason why I say apparently is because they haven't ironed out the details. Those are going to committees, and that's generally where they start shooting each other. But Egypt was the broker in this case, and Egypt is no friend of Hamas. And Hamas is in a really bad position. Qatar isn't really returning their calls anymore. Not, at least they don't have the support in Qatar that they used to have. The Egyptians have basically shut them down because they don't like the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood's their parent organization.
Also, you got to understand something. Egypt is being run by their army.
Right.
And their interest is maintaining peace.
Yes.
Okay?
They don't want to get caught up in a war.
Right. That maintains the status quo. They're no longer trying to destroy Israel, and they don't want to be dragged into something because of the Palestinians.
Right.
So it's in their interest to broker. On the other hand, I've seen this story about 20 times. In the last few years.
Exactly. Okay? Yes, it's not the first time that this has come up.
The real problem is that Hamas Fatah has never, which is Abbas's party, has never recognized Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state either.
Right.
Hamas has never even recognized Israel's right to exist as a state.
As a secular state, right.
Right. So I don't see it getting together because even Obama wanted Hamas to renounce terrorism and accept Israel before he dealt with them.
Right.
At least before he dealt with them out in the open.
Directly and out in the open. Right. Here's the point where I think that is going to fall apart. Hamas wants to keep its military wing intact in Gaza.
Right.
4,000 fighters. Now, Abbas would have to be insane to take that kind of a deal. There's no way you let Hamas operate their own military in that area if you're going to be responsible for what it is that they do. I mean, that's nuts. And I can't see that being the end result.
I first object to the term military wing, but
terrorist wing then.
Right, and because Fatah, their military wing is the same thing, another terrorist thing.
Yeah, they have a police force, which is different.
Right, is right. It's interesting because when Israel became a state in 1948, there were like 10 different armies. And what Ben-Gurion said was, this is the army, and if there's any other one, we will attack them.
Yes.
And really, you can only have one army.
You can only have one army. And what I think is going to happen, if Abbas takes that deal, is they're basically trying to sucker Abbas into conducting a war against Israel. If Abbas takes over Gaza, if the Palestinian Authority takes over Gaza, Hamas then can start a war with Israel. They've done it 3 times in the last 10 years. And it will force Abbas to fight the war out of the West Bank as well, which is going to force Israel to basically wipe out both sides.
I think you're missing a step, though. Because if they're united, there's going to be united elections. And Hamas wants to run the whole deal.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Hamas wants the deal, because they want to run all of the Palestinian territories.
Yeah, that's the reason why Benjamin Netanyahu says they won't recognize a Palestinian Authority with a Hamas component in it.
Right.
And for good reason, because that's going to be the outcome eventually. May not happen in the first elections, but that's going to be the outcome eventually.
Well, yeah, and Abbas isn't as popular as he used to be, if he ever was. You know, people don't realize that he was elected, I think, 12 years ago, and he's never had a second election. And he runs the place like a tyrant. They're not happy with him. And just like Arafat did, they get the aid money and it goes straight to Switzerland.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, or to pay off Weinstein's lovers, or, you know, the people he attacked.
Well, so you're going to bring Weinstein back into this anyway, weren't you?
You know, I can't be totally straight. You know that.
I know. Really quickly.
Well, wait a second. I am totally straight. Anyway.
I didn't mean it that way. Nobody took it that way, Jeff. Come on now, man. Come on, man.
I'm joking.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. We have to say that afterwards. That's the Seinfeld line. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
But my wife might be listening, you know?
Yeah, your wife might have a problem with it. I can see how that would happen. We've only got a couple minutes left, Jeff. Iran deal. Does Trump declare it's not in the United States' best interest and kick it back to Congress?
Yes. However, the way it's being described in the media is totally wrong, because they keep saying that he's going to pull out and that decertifying the deal is the same as pulling out. And it's also, the media is looking at it and says, well, you know, Mattis says he doesn't want to pull out. He doesn't want to pull out. But from what I've heard is he's gotten his whole foreign policy team to agree that they should decertify. And let me tell you the primary reason why I think he should decertify.
Okay.
2 weeks ago, the United Nations, the UNWRA, the inspectors,
yes,
said that the IAEA that they couldn't certify that Iran is doing their part of the deal.
Because they can't inspect the military sites.
Right. So can you say that Iran is breaking the deal? Well, there are little things, but you really can't. The reason you can't is because you don't know what they're doing.
Right. You can't find out. You can't find out what they're doing.
Supposedly, there's only one military site where where Iran had the permission not to have inspectors, and that was Parchin, where they made this side deal where everything's done on TV, and they self-inspect, and then they mail the
video,
the dirt. No,
the dirt.
They're watching live. They mail the dirt to the IAEA, and we all know what the nuns always said about self-inspection. You grow hair on your palms and you lose your eyesight.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, radiation works the same way, by the way.
I'm sure. But the bottom line is that we don't know what's going on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's another group that is the opposition group, and they have in the United States and in Iran, and they get fed information. They're the organization that told the U.S. and about Parchin, about the nuclear plant that's under the mountain. So they told us about stuff that we didn't know.
That's right.
And they say that they built a second facility in Parchin where they're doing their military, they're doing their nuclear tests.
Yep.
So the bottom line is that, do you want to take their word for it? Because that's all you're doing.
That's all we got. We're taking their word for it, and the answer to that is no. But that's the reason why you shouldn't have done the deal and held on to the $1.5 trillion in assets in order to force a better deal. Unfortunately, that's gone. So most of our leverage is gone now too.
But you know what? And again, here is another way the deal has been presented wrong. You know, people are saying we got to get rid of the deal because, you know what? Iran wants to destroy Israel.
Yeah.
And they do.
Yeah, they do.
But the other reason that you don't want to let them go nuclear is, well, look at the crazy nut in North Korea. Do you really want two crazy nuts with atomic bombs? And if you look at the theology of the Supreme Leader, who was the lead singer of the Supremes for a couple of years. But anyway, if you look at the Supreme Leader, his theology is that to bring about the I think it's the 12th or the 13th Imam, which is their Messiah, you had to have a nuclear configuration. You had to have, the whole world had to be at war.
Yes.
Okay? Yes. Do you really want someone with that kind of theology and who's a fanatic about it?
With their finger on the button. No.
With a button.
Right. With a button at all.
I wouldn't even want that Staples button that says, you know, doing great.
Order now. Order now.
Right. I wouldn't want them near a button.
All right,
so
Jeff.
Really, I'm afraid for the United States because we're the big Satan.
All right. We're going to have to go, though, because our next guest is calling in. Jeff Dunitz, lidblog.com, lidsvids.com, @YidWithLid on Twitter. Thanks
and I have a lot of background on the deal there.
There you go. So check that out.
Say hello to Selena for me, because she's wonderful.
I will definitely do that. All right,
okay,
sir.
Man. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Jeff Dunitz. And now joining us is Selena Z.